a little present to the adventuring wizard whose charm and curiosity surpass any known magic. I just wonder, why on earth did the Ministry of Magic choose a lout like you to host the Spellbook Chronicles instead of a charming witch like me? Oh, ignore the quill. Sometimes it doesn't quite know what it's on about. Fondly, Rita Skeeter.
My dear Rita, how could anyone not adore her? Albus, Percival, Wulfric, Brian Dumbledore. Famous for defeating the Dark Wizard Grindelwald in 1945 and for discovering the 12 uses of dragon's blood. He is considered by many to be the greatest wizard of the modern age. Yes, indeed, my dear wizards, witches, muggles, and squibs, it's still me, your charming adventurer wizard, Quentin Pentigran. And today's episode is all about gossip. The real story of Albus Dumbledore, penned by the most poisonous quill in the wizarding world. Because as much as we like to think so, our favorite headmaster was far from perfect and spotless. Even the greatest wizards have skeletons in their closets. But of course, not everyone has the courage to share it. Unlike yours truly. And it's well known that Dumbledore has a fondness for chamber music and 10-pin bowling, but not nearly as much as he loves muggle sherbet lemons. After all, who am I to judge?
At the end of the 19th century, the wizarding world stood at a crossroads. Throughout Europe, old muggle regimes were falling one after another. In England, the Industrial Revolution had transformed cities, railways spanned continents, and scientific progress seemed to edge muggles closer to discoveries that deeply unsettled the wizarding community. The Ministry of Magic watched with growing concern as their technologies advanced, fearing these tools might one day expose the existence of magic. It was in this tumultuous historical context that during the warm and tranquil days of August 1881, a child was born, one who would be remembered as the greatest and most powerful wizard the world had ever known. Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. The son of Kendra, a muggle-born witch, and Percival, a pure-blood wizard and a prominent figure in the noble Dumbledore family, whose crest features a phoenix. According to an ancient legend, this magical creature shares a unique bond with the family. A phoenix would come to the aid of any Dumbledore in desperate need. From his earliest years, young Albus displayed an exceptional talent for magic, particularly in his ability to understand it at its very core. He questioned even those things that others deemed trivial or self-evident. His curiosity seemed an inexhaustible well, a trait that would, over the years, evolve into an insatiable and at times obsessive thirst for knowledge. His attitude and thinking were exceptionally mature for a child, making him an immediate and protective figure, particularly towards his younger brother, Aberforth, but most of all towards his younger sister, Ariana. The Dumbledore family, during those years, lived a happy life in Mold on the Wold, a village that, like many others in England, such as Godric's Hollow, Tinworth, Upper Flagley, and Ottery St. Catchpole, became a place where witches and wizards settled in numbers after the International Statute of Secrecy, relying on one another for mutual support while living alongside a muggle population. The days passed carefree, but as we know, no idol lasts forever. It was an ordinary day, that afternoon in 1891, when little Ariana, only 6 years old, was playing near the hedge in the backyard. Unexpectedly, the young girl began manifesting her magical powers without being able to control them, as is normal for a witch of her age. But something unexpected happened. 3 muggle boys, hidden nearby, had been secretly watching Ariana and witnessing her magical abilities. They demanded that she reveal the secret behind her magic, insisting she demonstrate the power they had just seen. However, Ariana, due to her very young age and magical immaturity, was unable to fulfill the muggles' request. Perceiving this as a refusal, the boys used it as an excuse to channel their instinctive fear and misunderstanding of magic into a brutal act of aggression. This dramatic episode, in addition to leaving an indelible mark on Ariana's psyche and compromising the rest of her life, also tore a deep wound in the Dumbledore family, especially in her brother Albus. a wound that would never fully heal and would irreversibly shape his worldview and future ambitions as a young wizard. As a result of the attack by the Muggles, Ariana began to withdraw into herself, speaking less and less each day. Her once sunny and playful demeanor was replaced by a shadow fueled by terror. The trauma of what had happened was so overwhelming that the young girl developed an uncontrollable anxiety about her magical nature, which, little by little, began to fade, suppressed by her fear. Many scholars of magic agree in theorizing that what was slowly developing within Ariana Dumbledore was none other than an obscurus, a dark and parasitic force that emerges when a wizard child consciously suppresses their magical abilities or is forced to do so due to physical or psychological abuse. This energy can manifest as a separate entity, erupting in violent and destructive fury. For her father Percival, seeing the condition to which the three Muggles had reduced his daughter was something that could not be ignored. Aware that the magical law enforcement would never intervene in such an insignificant case, the wizard arrived at the only possible solution. He would take justice into his own hands. It was an evening like any other when Percival found the three boys and attacked them with fierce fury. What those monsters had put his little girl through had to be avenged at any cost. Although Percival spared the lives of the Muggles, it is likely that he inflicted unbearable pain using the Cruciatus Curse. The gravity of his actions was impossible to ignore, and it wasn't long before the sentence for his immediate arrest was issued, swift and unyielding. When asked, the wizard never revealed to the authorities the true reason for his attack. Had the truth come to light, he believed, little Ariana would surely have been taken from her family and placed under strict observation at St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and injuries for the rest of her life, effectively locking her away permanently as a danger to the international statute of wizarding secrecy. And this, he thought, could never happen. His daughter deserved to be kept safe, yes, but also loved and protected by her family. So, Percival Dumbledore was arrested and imprisoned in Azkaban, where he would remain until the end of his days. As a result of Percival's imprisonment, unpleasant rumors began to spread about the Dumbledore family in the village. The idea took hold that the attack on the three boys had been driven by a pure-blood ideology, fiercely anti-Muggle. A notion that was rather absurd, considering that Percival's wife, Kendra, was a Muggle-born witch. The woman, in order to preserve the integrity of the Dumbledore family, and above all, to protect her children, wisely decided to leave Mold on the Wold behind and settle in the village of Godric's Hollow. Despite the move, Ariana's condition worsened with each passing day. She began experiencing sudden, uncontrollable fits of rage, unleashing her repressed magical power with devastating force. Her brother Aberforth was the only one capable of calming her, even more so than Kendra, who had grown increasingly cold and withdrawn. She turned away every neighbor who came to welcome the family to Godric's Hollow, showing no exception, even for Bathilda Bagshot, a promising magical historian who would later gain fame across the wizarding world for her book A History of Magic. When Bathilda arrived at the Dumbledore's door with a tray of homemade cauldron cakes, Kendra slammed the door in her face without a second thought. While Kendra cared for Ariana, forbidding her from leaving the house, rumors began to spread through the village about the Dumbledore's squib daughter, allegedly kept hidden away in a locked cell. Albus and Aberforth stopped mentioning their sister entirely, learning to lie about her existence until the lie became the only truth anyone knew. Albus, now on the verge of his admission to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, showed little interest in Ariana, unlike Aberforth, who remained deeply attached to her. Instead, Albus spent countless hours poring over books and scrolls, absorbing all the knowledge he could about magic. His brilliance did not go unnoticed by Bathilda Bagshot, who, in the years to come, would follow his academic career with great fascination. The summer faded into autumn in the year 1892, marking the start of Albus Dumbledore's first term at Hogwarts, where he was sorted into Gryffindor House. Under the leadership of headmaster Phineas Nigellus Black, the school, like the wizarding world itself, was recovering from turbulent times. Just 2 years earlier, in 1890, Professor Eleazar Fig, the esteemed magical theory instructor, had lost his life during a raid led by the rogue goblin Ranrock, who sought to seize a hidden repository of ancient magic buried within the castle for decades. With the aid of a fifth-year student, however, Hogwarts had narrowly averted disaster, putting an end to the Loyalist Goblin Rebellion once and for all. On his very first day at Hogwarts, Albus formed an unlikely friendship with Elphias Doge, a boy still bearing the marks of a recent bout with dragonpox, his skin tinged green and pockmarked, a condition that left him isolated and avoided by most. But Albus, with a rare blend of empathy and insight, saw past the surface. Where others turned away, he extended a hand, drawn to the kindness and depth of character beneath Elphias' outward affliction. A boy who in time would become one of his most trusted friends. At Hogwarts, Albus discovered a sanctuary where he could indulge his insatiable thirst for knowledge. Nearly immediately, he became one of the most notable students at the school, not only for his unparalleled magical creativity and brilliance, but also due to the crime committed by his father. Rumors circulated among the student body, speculating about Albus's supposed disdain for Muggles. Some feared and criticized him for it, while others idolized him. Yet Albus had little regard for gossip or the opinions of others, choosing instead to focus on his own path. He threw himself wholeheartedly into his studies, even taking non-compulsory subjects like study of ancient runes. As the most exceptional student of his time, he was appointed a prefect in his 5th year, and later named head boy in his 7th. His extraordinary talent and relentless dedication to magical learning set him apart, paving the way for him to become one of the greatest wizards of his age. While much of his brilliance stemmed from his own efforts, he also benefited from the guidance of highly accomplished teachers who helped nurture his skills and unlock his full potential. His remarkable talents earned him trophies and honors, too numerous to count. Among these, he won the Barnabas Finkley Prize for exceptional spellcasting, served as the British youth representative to the Wiesengamot, and was widely regarded as perhaps the most brilliant student ever to grace Hogwarts. One whose future seemed poised to surpass even that of Merlin or the founders themselves. Thanks to his numerous achievements, Albus became remarkably well connected during his Hogwarts years, gaining the friendship and support of some of the most prominent scholars in the wizarding community. Among them was, of course, Bathilda Bagshot, but also Griselda Marchbanks, who examined him in his newts for charms and transfiguration, and later marveled that he did things with a wand she had never seen before. However, one figure stood above all as both a mentor and dear friend. The legendary alchemist Nicholas Flamel, creator of the infamous Philosopher's Stone and the Elixir of Life. Flamel passed down to Albus arts and secrets of magic so profound they defy the limits of ordinary understanding. During his years at Hogwarts, true to his Gryffindor spirit, Albus didn't shy away from dangerous adventures, often delving into the castle's secrets. Among these, he discovered the Spore Scrolls, a hidden collection left by headmistress Phillida Spore, detailing the creation of the Magical Enhancer, a rare fungus capable of amplifying magical abilities. Fearing how the wizarding world might exploit such knowledge, he decided its hiding place was far too vulnerable. Taking matters into his own hands, Albus stole the box containing the Spore Scrolls and concealed it deep within the Forbidden Forest.
Welcome back, my dear wizards, witches, muggles, and squibs. It's that time of year when the stars shine a little brighter, hearts are warmer, and magic feels even more special. I am Quentin Pentagran, and today I'm here to wish you a fantastic Christmas and a wonderful New Year. But wait, that's not all. To celebrate this festive season, we've prepared something truly special. We are announcing a Christmas giveaway. One of you will have the chance to win an exclusive box, which not only contains treats from Honeydukes and enchanting Wizarding World merchandise, but also a unique treasure, a USB stick with digital booklets that transform some of the most beloved stories from the Spellbook Chronicles into a magical illustrated book. And that's not all. The official Spellbook Chronicles booklets are now available. But before I explain how to enter the giveaway, let me return to a question I asked you in the very first episode of the Spellbook Chronicles. Which house does this charming adventure wizard belong to? With the Christmas spirit in the air, I think it's time to reveal the answer. I still remember the Sorting Hat's dilemma. Hufflepuff? Not even a moment's consideration. My first crush. I wonder how sweet Penny Haywood is doing these days. Gryffindor? I think the hat entertained the idea for a moment. Courage, boldness, and as old Dumbledore would say, a certain disregard for the rules. But with all due respect to Gryffindors, I'm not one to charge a troll without a strategy. No. The real debate was between Slytherin and Ravenclaw. I do remember a bit of awkwardness, in fact. I think the hat took at least 15 minutes to decide. A hat stole. But in the end, it made the right choice. Ravenclaw, my dear friends. The house for those who seek wisdom, appreciate intelligence, and yes, for those who can boast a scarf that perfectly matches a pair of charming and charismatic blue eyes. A Ravenclaw always keeps their word, so here's how you can enter the giveaway. First, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. What are you waiting for? Persuasion charm? Second, leave a comment below this video answering this question. If Santa Claus had been a student at Hogwarts, though some say he attended Durmstrang, which house would he belong to and why? Make sure you give good reasons for your choice. I'll pick the most creative and well thought out answer. So let your imagination run wild. You have until the 31st of December to respond. But that's not all. Besides the top prize, 2 lucky runners-up will win free downloads of the Spellbook Chronicles booklets. Good luck to you all. I wish you all a new year filled with wonders. May the magic always be with you. Merry Christmas from Quentin Pendragon and the Spellbook Chronicles team.
Albus Dumbledore graduated in June 1899, and with the conclusion of his time at Hogwarts, he was forced to confront the harsh reality awaiting him. The fragile state of his family, and most of all, his sister, Ariana, whose struggles he had tried to ignore during the past 7 years. The girl, who had never been sent to Hogwarts, unlike her brother Aberforth, was by then widely considered a squib. Before settling permanently in Godric's Hollow, the young man planned to embark on the traditional Grand Tour with his friend Doge, a journey around the world undertaken by many graduates. For Albus, his studies had only scratched the surface of magical knowledge. There was an entire world waiting for him to explore. However, a tragic event prevented him from leaving. Ariana's suppressed magic, now at the age of 14, had become increasingly unstable. Though the exact circumstances were unclear, one morning, the intense emotions of the girl overwhelmed her, unleashing the fury and destruction of her own Obscurus. Over the years, it had fed on Ariana's pain, growing ever more lethal. Unfortunately, that day, her favorite brother Aberforth was not at home to calm her, and she accidentally caused an explosion that resulted in the death of their mother, Kendra. After what had happened, with no parents to guide them, Albus realized that it was now his responsibility to take care of his family, and most importantly, to care for Ariana. But despite his sense of moral duty, resentment began to take root in the young wizard. Albus returned to Godric's Hollow, feeling trapped and wasted. How could he improve and reach his full potential there, isolated in that country house? How could he ever become the great wizard everyone believed him to be, and fulfill his future? But fate had other plans, once again altering the course of events, when a young wizard of the same age as Albus arrived in Godric's Hollow from the distant north. The young man came to the village to live with his great-aunt, Bathilda Bagshot, in order to deepen his knowledge of the magical world. It was the summer of 1899 when Albus Dumbledore and Gellert Grindelwald met for the first time, shaking hands.
Pleased to meet you, Albus.
After just a day of knowing each other, their bond quickly deepened into a close friendship. They spent hours together, exchanging ideas, discussing their dreams, and growing ever closer. They discovered they had much in common, sharing not only their ambitions, but a deep passion for magic. Albus had never encountered anyone as brilliant and charismatic as Gellert, someone so deeply knowledgeable about magic and so skilled in the use of its most complex spells. The young wizard shared with Albus the story of his expulsion from Durmstrang for immoral practices and experimentation with the dark arts.
And that's why
He explained how he had come to Godric's Hollow to further his knowledge of the magical world, especially the fabled artifacts known as the Deathly Hallows.
I'll find them.
According to legend, Godric's Hollow had once been the home of one of the three brothers from the tale, Ignotus Peveril, the possessor of the Cloak of Invisibility. For Grindelwald, finding the Deathly Hallows became an obsession, as he saw in them the power to enforce his vision and the courage to act for the greater good of the wizarding world and its preservation. Albus, too, quickly became captivated by Gellert's ideas of wizarding domination, partly viewing him as an unexpected opportunity to prove his own brilliance and escape the confines of his small, local life. But more than that, Albus found in Gellert's vision a solution and a kind of comfort to a problem that had ultimately led to the downfall of his own family. The existence of Muggles and their continued survival, left unchecked by the wizarding world, needed to change. The bureaucratic system orchestrated by the Ministry was flawed, old and weakened by its own laws, and it had to be overthrown. During the 2 months that Gellert stayed in Godric's Hollow, the bond between the young men deepened, growing into something more profound and intimate. They fell in love, trusting one another blindly, understanding and caring for each other in ways they had never experienced before. Albus, swept up in the fervor of their shared vision, pushed aside any lingering doubts about Gellert's darker tendencies. He allowed himself to believe that the revolution they were embarking on was truly for the greater good. A term he had coined himself, which would later become the motto of their ideology. He convinced himself that any harm along the way would be justified, that the sacrifices they made would be repaid 1,000-fold when their vision was finally realized. This is how one of the letters written by Albus during the summer of 1899 reads:
Gellert, your point about wizard dominance being for the Muggles' own good, this, I think, is the crucial point. Yes, we have been given power, and yes, that power gives us the right to rule. But it also gives us responsibilities over the ruled. We must stress this point. It will be the foundation stone upon which we build. Where we are opposed, as we surely will be, this must be the basis of all our counter-arguments. We seize control for the greater good. And from this, it follows that where we meet resistance, we must use only the force that is necessary, and no more. This was your mistake at Durmstrang, but I do not complain, because if you had not been expelled, we would never have met. Albus.
By the end of the summer, fully aligned in their beliefs and ambitions, the two were ready to leave Godric's Hollow. They planned to embark on a journey in search of the 3 Deathly Hallows, and more importantly, to lay the groundwork for a global wizarding war, intending to force Muggles into subservience. Their shared goal was clear: to become the great leaders of the revolution, reshaping the magical world in their image. When Aberforth discovered this, he was furious. He saw Albus as a narcissistic egotist who, once again, had found a convenient justification to convince himself that abandoning his family was for their own good. The younger brother became aggressive, trying to persuade Albus to stay, not for him, but for Ariana, who desperately needed his protection. That night, the argument grew intense, and after another threat, it was Grindelwald who intervened. Aberforth drew his wand, but Gellert was quicker. The Cruciatus curse hit the younger brother, and he screamed, writhing in excruciating pain. Grindelwald couldn't help but laugh. Foolish boy, he sneered as the pain echoed through the room. In that moment, Albus realized just how monstrous a person Gellert truly was. Overcome with horror, he stepped in to protect his younger brother, and a 3-way duel erupted. In the chaos, Ariana rushed down the stairs to see what was happening, desperate to stop the fight, but she had no understanding of the danger she was walking into. A flash of light from a spell struck her. No one ever truly knew which of the 3 wands had cast it. Ariana's lifeless body crumpled to the ground, her eyes wide open, but empty, devoid of life. Ariana Dumbledore was dead. According to theories, Grindelwald quickly retreated to his great-aunt's cottage, where he had her create a portkey to take him back home. Meanwhile, Albus rushed to his sister's lifeless body, his heart heavy with guilt and despair. As he knelt beside her, he cried uncontrollably, knowing that nothing, not even his deepest regret, could ever undo the tragedy he'd caused. This was the definitive event that shattered the bond between the two young wizards forever and, more importantly, marked a point of no return for Albus Dumbledore, shaping him into the man we know today. It is interesting to recall the answer Albus himself, many years later as headmaster of Hogwarts, gave to young Harry Potter's innocent question before the magic of the Mirror of Erised.
Professor Dumbledore, can I ask you something?
Obviously, you've just done so.
Dumbledore smiled.
You may ask me one more thing, however.
What do you see when you look in the mirror?
I see myself holding a pair of thick woolen socks.
Harry stared.
One can never have enough socks,
said Dumbledore.
Another Christmas has come and gone and I didn't get a single pair. People will insist on giving me books.
It was only when he was back in bed that it struck Harry that Dumbledore might not have been quite truthful. But then he thought, as he shoved Scabbers off his pillow, it had been quite a personal question. The truth is that the image Albus Dumbledore saw reflected in the mirror, despite the passage of time, kept a deep, unhealed wound open. His family alive, whole and happy. Percival and Kendra restored to him. Ariana alive and freely practicing magic. And Aberforth reconciled with him. After his sister's death and his separation from Grindelwald, Albus traveled to France, spending time in Paris, studying the ancient art of alchemy under Nicolas Flamel. Perhaps he sought both to give his brother space and to channel his grief into something productive rather than succumb to despair. It is unclear when he returned to Britain, but by then Albus had developed an intense interest in dragon's blood, ultimately discovering 12 new uses for it. This remarkable achievement earned him widespread recognition and paved the way for an offer to teach at Hogwarts. Deeply fond of the school and drawn to teaching since his youth, Albus gladly accepted. And so it was that the wizard returned to the castle, not to learn this time, but to teach. Burdened by the secret knowledge of Grindelwald's imminent rise to power and wanting to rectify past mistakes, it was natural, perhaps, that he felt drawn towards the job of defense against the dark arts instructor, a position in which he could most easily prepare his charges for the dangers he knew one day would come.
Excuse me?
Albus, who would henceforth come to be known to successive generations of students as Professor Dumbledore.
And here we are, my dear wizards, witches, muggles, and squibs, at the end of this tale. But as Dumbledore once said, death is but the next great adventure, especially when you're following the Spellbook Chronicles. So don't put away your wands just yet, because more adventures and mysteries are right around the corner. So I guess I'll see you in the next tantalizing episode.